Well, hey there, and welcome back to this book study on The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Howard. And this is a reflection on chapter 3 of this book. And this video might be a little bit longer than the others just because this chapter is loaded with insights, challenges, and encouragements. I mean, I think by this point, it's hard to deny that screens, streaming, smartphones, video games, the way we consume digital content has had a tremendous effect on us personally, on our families, and on how we parent. And this chapter falls for me into the gray area of this conversation. And not that any of these solutions are black and white or easy to maneuver through. I wanted to bring you a resource here, and this is a book by Andy Crouch. It was a great book called The Tech-Wise Family, Everyday Steps for Putting Technology in Its Proper Place. This is a go-to book for me on understanding how to use technology to further the values of my family, so that technology itself does not become a value of our family. And so it's how to use it. But this is written from a Christian perspective. It has insights from the Barna Group kind of laced throughout this book. But something I want to note is this book was written in 2017. Now, that might not seem like a long time ago, but in terms of the digital age and in digital time, that's an eternity, right? But the need in 2017 is even greater, I think, today on how do we use technology, and is how we're using technology furthering the values of our family? And big question, what are the values of your family? What are the key non-negotiable values that you hold to as a family? What's the mission of your family? Right? And we need to be able to answer those things. Otherwise, technology is going to slip its way into all the cracks and become a value in and of itself. I mean, all you got to do is read some history books, watch some stand-up comedy, listen to stories from your parents or your grandparents. Understand times have changed quite a bit when it comes to the expectations that are on parents today. Right? In the early 2000s, the term helicopter parent was coined to describe parents who are over involved in their children's lives, sort of hovering over them, swooping in to kind of rescue them from any trouble they may get into. And then in 2008, another term came out, and that was called free-range parenting. And this is a style of parenting that encourages children to grow and learn with more independence and less parental supervision. The main point of Jonathan is that our motives may be all right, but where our focus needs to be readjusted is between this aspect of the digital and the real world. He says that today we are overprotecting our children, our adolescents, in the real physical world, but underprotecting them in the virtual digital world. Between the years of 2010 and 2015 is what is known as, then he's quoting, the anxious generation. He claims that these kids were helicoptered, parented, right, in the physical world, but almost given like free range parenting in their digital worlds. It hit me in this chapter. It was talking about, it's a lot of fear. I think in parenting, there's a lot of fear. And I think one of the greatest fears any parent would have is their child being abducted or assaulted, right? And in the book, they bring up stats that most predators now, again, you got to teach your child risk assessment and be vigilant. None of this is to say, you're not being vigilant or taking your God-given duty as a provider and protector of your children seriously. It's not that. But the reality, and this is what hit me, most predators are not trying to get that done in the physical world, right? In our communities, a lot of times the first interactions that they're going to have with children is going to be in the digital world. They're going to go on there first to make connection or post, fake profiles and sort of catfish or manipulate their way into kids' lives. Right. So again, it goes to that reality of loosening up control a bit in the physical world while becoming more involved and having good boundaries, expectations, guardrails in their digital world. I think most parents, I know I do, would fall somewhere in the middle of the two extremes of the helicopter and free range parenting styles. I think that's normal, it's healthy, and I think each parent will fall in different ways within that. I think it's a great conversation point for married couples, right? You might have, the dad or the mom or whoever, where they fall in that spectrum, and if you have, let's say you have a dad that is way more of a helicopter, a mom way more of a helicopter, and then the other parent is way more free range, right? That might create a little bit of conflict between those styles of parenting. And so I think it's a great conversation to have as a parent. But I think my recommendation would be to avoid the ditches on either side of this, but don't miss the main point on this chapter. And that is to set boundaries, have rules, lead and guide them in their digital life. So most importantly in their digital life, obviously boundaries, rules, lead and guide them in their physical life, no doubt. But to maybe, take the teeter-totter effect where they need more of that in the digital world with a lessening of that in their physical life. We want our kids to live in what they call discovery mode, eyes wide open, experiencing life in a full way. On page 72, the author illustrates what kids need with the example of trees and wind. Oh man, how good was this example in this chapter, right? It talked about them trying to grow trees, and they're trying to do this in a way that then they could transfer to other planets if we were to be growing vegetation. But one of the things they didn't bring into account was wind. Trees need wind to have stronger roots. No wind makes for a weak tree. Biologically, you can see how this would affect then how all kids are raised in a way. It was just a great example to challenge us as parents on where we're focusing our efforts and where we land between the helicopter and the free range, sort of this concerted cultivation or the natural growth. So I think as parents, though, we do need to be challenged to loosen up a bit. Maybe for some of us, loosen up a lot on our control of our kids' physical worlds. But many parents need to up their game on the boundaries and rules and expectations of the digital world and how they are modeling those values, right? Either in positively or negatively to the children, right? Let's just ask a few questions. How does a digital childhood deprive our children from key experiences they need for full development? How is that like a tree with no wind? And what might the outcome be? And how does this connect with the mental health crisis that we are seeing? Again, it would be so easy to want to blame the kids or blame society or blame the phones or blame social media or blame the tech companies. But the reality is this: someone bought those kids those phones. Someone bought the kids those video game consoles. Someone bought the TV, someone bought the iPad, someone bought the laptop, someone pays the internet bill, someone pays the electric bill. Right? So that someone, as long as they have that role in the child's life, is the one then who has the responsibility to teach, guide, mentor them in that world. I mean, think of it like a driver's license, right? It's not like kids just get to an age and then you just hand them a driver's license. There's coaching and teaching that's involved. And then there's even tests that they have to pass in order to be licensed to operate a vehicle, right? I think something similar should happen with a cell phone. I think to hand a child a cell phone with unlimited data, unlimited access to all the information of world history, right? That at a click of a button, and then to connect with, and then if there's no rules on what apps they can download and they can get on any of the social media sites, I mean, that is a recipe for disaster. The same as handing a 13-year-old car keys to a 500 horsepower Corvette. Like, what do you think is going to happen? That's what we're seeing, right? In the supplemental resource, the 5 strategies for parents to free the anxious generation. Again, free download. Just Google this. Great resource in here. The clinical psychologist, Dr. Becky Kennedy, has this to say about parenting in this time. In making the anxious generation less anxious relies on parents understanding our role as parents. This is what she says. We all want to do a good job. And yet, no one hands us a job description when we become parents. A clear job description, okay, this is how she's defining it, is a clear path to success. A parent's job is to establish safety by setting boundaries and validating emotions. And the kid's job is to develop emotional regulation skills by expressing their feelings, including reactions to the boundaries. Here's the key idea. This is what she says. Here's the key idea. You're allowed to set boundaries, and your kid is allowed to have feelings about these boundaries. You can then validate their feelings while holding to your boundaries. Your boundaries don't dictate your kid's feelings, and your kid's feelings shouldn't dictate your boundaries. Now that you know your job, you will be able to successfully navigate even the trickiest phone situations. That's because success means everyone doing their job and not everyone being pleased with the process to the outcome. Man, there's some good quotes in there, right? I want to just personally empower, I want to encourage all of you to really stand in that gap as parents, as mentors, as leaders of the next generation. They need us to teach them, model for them, and guide them, not only in their physical reality, but also in their digital reality as well. So use these resources of the TechWise Family by Andy Crouch, or the download of the 5 strategies for parents to free the anxious generation, and obviously the continued reading of the anxious generation. Use these resources to educate yourself and then step up to the plate and lead well in the ways that God has empowered you to lead. Well, thanks for being part of this reflection on chapter 3, and we will see you in our next video on a reflection of chapter 4. We'll see you then.